Everyone, welcome to the first Property Boys podcast.
Podcast, okay.
Okay, I know we're not okay. It might be show. We haven't decided yet, but anyways, my name is Antony Malfara. This is my business partner, Steve Bucciol.
Hello.
And we run a real estate team here in Toronto called the Property Boys. We are with Royal LePage Signature, and this is something we wanted to do for a long time now. We finally got things in place, and we figured
Antony wanted to do for a long time.
Maybe I wanted to do for a long time. And we figured what better way to start the podcast or the show off than to have our leader of Royal LePage Signature, Chris Slightham, on the show. Thanks, Chris, for joining us for the first time.
This is exciting. I can't believe I'm here for the inaugural one.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Let's start with this, I guess. Let's share some of your history, your past. We know that you have a lot of deep roots in real estate.
Yep.
Your family, yourself, you've been doing it for a long time. Why don't you start with sharing with the audience?
Sure.
Your resume.
Yeah, sure. My resume. Well, I'll just give you a quick, brief overview. Our family's been in real estate or real estate related businesses forever. My grandfather was a bricklayer originally, home builder. Really? There you go. Yeah. Home builder, and then we kind of evolved into the brokerage side of the business, investing in real estate all the way along, and everything we do is real estate related. We've had an incredible no stocks. I don't understand them. So
no Bitcoin.
Stick with what you know, as they say, right? And so it's been great. We've been very lucky. I mean, the biggest luck I think for all of us is the fact that we live where we live,
Toronto,
right? You think about how lucky we are, and anything real estate in Toronto has been a really good, opportunity. It's had its ups and downs over the years, and maybe we're going into a down a little bit right now. But it's been a great run, so we're very lucky.
So I just want to talk about that a little bit because I'm coming from my previous life was working for my father, and I did that for 22 years.
Yeah.
I take it that this is all you've done. You work for the family business?
So
initially, sorry.
Yeah, I had, prior to, growing up, I had other businesses. When I was a teenager, I had a painting and maintenance company, and I tried that out on my own to try and figure out what it's like to build your own database of clients. And then we have a family rule where you have to go and work for another company first in the real estate industry.
That's a good rule.
Prior to coming here for a couple of years.
So I want to touch on that because I heard about that.
Yeah.
That I think. So what is the rule? After you've done 2 years, or after you've done 20 transactions?
2 years is really the
number,
what we find is a good time period from our experience, where you're out there, you're trying to figure it out on your own. You've really understood what it's like to help people buy and sell real estate, or rent, or or invest, or whatever you're doing.
I think that's such a good idea. Like what happened to me, it was meant to be part-time. It was meant to be it was
That's
meant
often,
to
right?
just take a year off and then decide
Yeah.
to go to university. And that year became many years, 6-7 years before I decided, okay, then I went to university part-time. But how did you find working even after working for somebody else, coming back, how was it working for family? Did you find it was actually harder working for family than perhaps somebody else? Or
I think it's harder in the sense that you don't want to disappoint, right? And you want to do well because you have an opportunity that's hasn't happened without effort, right? You have previous generations that have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into creating a business, and so the harder point is not wanting to disappoint and not wanting to fail. Like it was as far as I was concerned, like there was no, I will do whatever it takes to make sure.
You've kind of shifted the business, and like you've changed not courses, but I know in talking to previously, there was a time period where you said, well, we have to shift things, we have to change something in the organization that wasn't running the way.
And I think every industry goes through evolution and change, right? So whether it's a real estate brokerage, or the car industry, or banking, or you name it, right? The clothing, restaurants, every industry evolves, and you have to try, if you want to stay relevant and you want to be successful, you've got to constantly evolve. And so, there was a time period where the 90s was a tough decade, for the real estate industry as a whole. And we learned a lot going through a long, protracted down market, and we had to make some decisions. So we took what we learned from that time period and said, look, if we want to make sure that we're sustainable, successful for the future, we had to assess what was going on. And then, of course, what also was pretty cool happening in the 90s is the internet was born. And we were watching very closely and paying attention to what was going on with technology and the evolution of how real estate was going to be traded. And
it definitely changed,
and it's
right?
changed
Because I remember, I mean, I wasn't in real estate then, but I remember the books.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And,
if you wanted to know what was for sale, you had to get this book.
Exactly. If you had that book, you were
King.
You knew what was going on.
Yeah, you had
exactly.
it's the Bible, right?
And now everybody has access to all that's available right out there thanks to technology, which is great. I think it's a fabulous evolution. When it was books, you really were you were geographically local specialists.
Right.
Because you didn't have it wasn't as, access to information wasn't as proficient as it is today.
Oh,
right?
it wasn't like a GTA book.
No, it was all divided up into
right.
sections.
Something Steve said once. Remember, with technology, we're all neighbors now. Right?
We're all
That's a
neighbors.
brilliant- yeah, exactly.
We're all neighbors, and that relates to the fact that, have you worked this particular area or this, section of the city, and often, we obviously haven't worked in every part of the
Everywhere.
city, but that is our thing. Look, with technology, we're smart guys. We pick up fairly quickly. With technology, we're all neighbors. So,
And the key is now too, everybody has access to information, but it's deciphering the information that's the value prop, right? That we bring as professionals, that you guys bring to your clients, is helping them determine, okay, what does this information mean?
exactly, and this is I wanted to bring up. So initially, you were all end all because nobody knew the sales other than you.
Mm-hmm.
You were the person who had the book
Yep.
of what was
Yep.
for sale.
Yep.
So when the book turned to the internet, that I'm sure scared a lot of people, and
It did.
the people that weren't meant to be real estate agents, they kind of went off.
Mm-hmm.
And now, as you know, in the last few years, everybody can see what the house is sold for.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's a new kind of stepping stone. Okay, what value do I have? Nobody necessarily has to call me for these sold. But we were never scared of this because
No.
we knew that there's much more value to the business than just letting you know what's sold.
Yeah.
And as you put it, analysis is key, and this is one thing that we feel so grateful in a way of how you or this brokerage brings that information to us into literally layman's terms that we can talk to anybody about.
It's critical, and I think that to me is our core, or one of our key value propositions, is helping people understand really what all this stuff means. Because with media and social media and devices and all these things, fantastic things we have, you're getting information sent to you whether you like it or not.
It's not always the information you need for where you are.
And it's not always the headlines aren't always. Accurate might not be the right word, but they're not always easy to completely decipher, right? And so the value, you have to think about it. I mean, we're helping people with most people's single largest asset is their home. So, that's a pretty big decision, I would say, right? And so if you're out there making a decision about real estate, I would hope that you're finding somebody who's really going to help you decipher that. And that's what we do, is because our whole organization is focused on helping people get the best education about real estate.
Exactly. So it's not like, what should I be doing? Should I be selling? Should I be buying? It's not really that kind of. We just basically provide the facts, and
correct.
And through the facts, the answers will
present themselves.
Will present themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We always say, well, it depends, right? Should I buy or sell? Well, it depends.
Our job
Right,
is not
let's-
to convince
Yeah.
someone that they have to sell or move. That's their decision to make, right?
100%.
They need four bedrooms, and they got to move.
Yeah.
But our job is to make sure they are informed and
The
educated.
kids are growing up. You want to get rid of them. They need to
Exactly.
move too,
But
right?
that's a good point. You mentioned about so our job is to mention the situation or the current climate of the market, and if we have to, we'll dissect that in order to present a case or what they're looking for. But really, it's about if you're buying and selling in the same market. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Why is it you want to move? Do you really need that fourth bedroom?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. My mother. Okay, then it's time to move.
Yeah. It's timing the market is almost impossible, right? I mean, there are some, you can delay a move if you can, manage that a little bit or, pause a decision. But timing the market is almost impossible. It's really, as we always say, it's time in the market that's really the benefit, right? So, you've got to make your decision. So some people, well, is today a good time to buy or sell? Well, it depends. It depends on your situation. It depends on what your timeline is. And it likely, if it's important to whatever, like you said, you need another bedroom. Well, you need another bedroom. So if you're buying or selling in the market,
this will always happen. By the way,
yeah.
Look at that.
Whenever we are
You know what? I'm proud.
doing something,
Listen,
Steve will drop
I
comment.
am proud that nothing
didn't
went
go
on my
on
shirt
yet.
for the
That's
last 2
fantastic.
hours.
If
I know.
this
You
didn't
warned me
happen-
that this was going to happen.
If this didn't happen, I would actually be shocked.
Yeah, exactly. No,
So
that's fantastic.
It's great, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe let's talk about the elephant in the room and let's share it with the audience. The current market.
Yeah.
Right? Like what's your take on the current environment?
I think we have to take a step back. I mean, I COVID is a real reality for all of us, right? And I think we have to realize that there were things that had to happen in order to keep our economy, our societies, our world kind of moving forward. And so when COVID began and we were all, frightened about what the prospects were of this global pandemic, the world had to be paused. Like we had to stop. We had to have everybody stay home. But we also then had to do things. If we were going to pause the world where people can't go to work,
Right.
they can't, they had to close businesses. Certain industries got, really devastated.
Money had to be printed.
That's what happened, right? So they had to change their economic policies, right, to accommodate what was going on around the world. And real estate ended up being the you could say the benefactor of that,
Right.
because cost of borrowing was dropped dramatically. So cost of borrowing dropped. We came through the first 8-10 weeks of COVID. We felt that we were able to manage it. The healthcare system was under control. Things were moving along. And then the world kind of started to open up and people started making decisions. But interest rates came from 3% to literally basically 1.5%, right? And so all of a sudden, people are like, yeah, let's go. We got to make decisions. Life is progressing. We need to make decisions. So they made a whole bunch of decisions. And with the economic policies that were in place, it really caused the real estate market to really kick off. And we basically got ahead of ourselves. The stock market did the same thing, right? Yeah. And we got ahead of ourselves. So now, as we all know now, inflation kicked in, and like there's no playbook for a pandemic, right? In modern times. So the federal banks around the world, Bank of Canada included, made decisions based on information they had, and you could arguably say they maybe left rates too low for a little too long. And it caused one of the factors. It caused inflation, and especially in real estate.
Right. You said this many times. It was left a little too long, and so we're now going hard now. But
right,
and we can get into this later. But we're going so hard now that your prediction later. We'll talk about this. Your prediction, they're going to actually pull back. Something in the
well, that's
in the
it,
new
right?
year
They have to. Now we've got to go the other way to say, oh, shoot, we've got a little too hot of a situation here. Now it was more than just interest rates. We have to acknowledge. I mean, there's supply chain issues. There's a very devastating, war going on in the Ukraine, which is causing, other global economic issues and which is the least of the worries for the folks in Ukraine. But you've got these factors happening. Now you've got to try and manage it. And to your point you just made. Let's slam on the brakes here, folks, because 8% inflation is not where we want to be. Mm-hmm. And of course, real estate's the first one to react. When you move rates, because typically they move interest rates at a 1/4 point every time. Well, as we now know, we've done a 3/4 of a point and a point, and who knows what's going to happen, in October. So it's a quick move like that. Naturally, you're going to pause and say, "Wait a second."
Naturally, there's going to be a quick move on the prices as well.
Yeah.
So this round here, we're looking at something completely different than 2017.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think, and every time there is something different, right? Every time there's a change, it's for a different reason, right? If otherwise, it wouldn't change, right? Because there's always something new. Now it's they've dropped rates faster than they've as far as I'm aware of, or sorry, they drop rates faster than I've ever seen them drop. Now they're raising them faster than I've ever seen them rise. And so it causes that pause for people to say, well, hold on a second, let's wait and see. And that causes prices to adjust, which if we really look back in the last, 24 months, they moved pretty quick, right? And so really they're now back to where I would ultimately say they should have been in the first place. And we'll find a new foundation here.
The question, how much more? The question that everyone wants to hear.
Everybody wants to know.
How much more of a drop do you see happening in price, given what we're thinking is going to happen, which would probably be another %, maybe a 1.25% drop in the next balance of year?
Yeah.
My personal take is that I don't think it's going to be the same that we've seen, because I think there's a big psychological aspect to raising rates that quickly.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the impact or reaction has been has happened, and you'll see some residual effects, I think. But
I think
what do you think? What do you?
The anticipation is already in effect.
It's already there.
Yeah.
So
we're aware of it now,
So
right? And we're digesting it.
It's okay, 4 to 5 or whatever it might be, right? So
sure.
what do you? I know it's a loaded question in a way, but what do you think? How much?
Where rates are going to go?
Well, no, how much more of a drop in price do you see from
That's a great question.
from year over year? Because we're roughly flat year over
we
year.
know roughly where the rates are going to go.
I think to both your points, I think most of the move has happened. So if and this is a blanket statement, first of all, which we have to clarify, because there are parts of the city, every what we call micro markets, right? We dial it down into the neighborhoods and the regions and the areas and the property types and the price ranges.
Yep.
It's all different right across the GTA, how the market has adjusted differently. So if you're thinking about overall market, you might see a few more percentage points drop, but in some areas, prices actually might start to go up.
Yeah, right.
This is where you got to be careful with averages.
It
Obviously,
is.
averages skews the numbers. So,
but that's the deciphering that we talked about earlier of the data, that if you're trying to make a buy or sell or invest decision for yourself, that's why you need to have you guys right?
And dive into the micro markets.
Dive into it and figure it out relative to that product type, that price range, that location, all those things, right?
We have, like, in our area, in the Lawrence Park area, or Bedford Park, we have a listing right now that we're going to drop. There's also another listing in a lower price bracket that's holding offers for next week, as an example.
There you go.
Right, so that shows the difference between higher price homes and more affordable homes, and the changes that are happening.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. So you think relatively the same, maybe a tiny bit of a drop, but the government, we feel that they're going hard right now. At some point, you're predicting, you said this before, that they're going to be sometime in the new year. We don't know exactly when, maybe the early part of the new year, that they'll be scaling back. Okay, we've done our job. Now it's time to scale back. And then when that happens, you're going to see some pickup in the market, probably.
Absolutely. And I think that I believe, again, just from observing over being in the industry and watching, how the Bank of Canada operates with interest rates over the years, and look, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know for sure, but just experience would even looking as early back as 2019, how 18 and 19, how the rates were evolving at that point in time, when they realized then when rates got too high, things were slowing down pretty quick in late 18, early 19. And so they changed their strategy. And by halfway through 2019, they reversed course and said, you know what, we're actually going to pull them back a little bit, because they had accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. Right. So we have to acknowledge that, look, there's no playbook. There's no recent examples of navigating a pandemic. They're doing their best. They're having to make decisions today. But it doesn't mean that rates stay high for a long period of time. And what they're watching for is if the economy starts to slow down too much, then they're going to start to drop rates again. I think we're going to start to see that in the new year. Again, when it happens, first quarter, second quarter, it's anybody's guess at this point.
I'm just curious, because we know that the peak was in February. Things started going crazy, actually, from November 2021, and peaked February, March.
Yes.
If we cut that out, if we would cut out that period, what do you think I mean, the numbers would be totally different right
totally
now.
different.
Yeah.
We'd actually have very normal price appreciation, right? It just got, look, we had some interesting factors that were happening at that time period. Inventory was at historic lows, all-time historic lows, based on the size of our market. So inventory is at all-time historic lows. They had talked about rates rising, so people that maybe were on the fence of whether they should buy yet or not, all of a sudden they're hearing rates are going up, so I better jump in the market. So we had no inventory for people that wanted to buy, right? Hardly any. And with the prospect of rates rising, so people were saying, oh gosh, well maybe I've been waiting, okay, now it's time to go. So we had a whole bunch of interest, demand, and we had, our as we all know, our country is growing at an incredibly rapid pace of population growth, which is a planned strategy, which is fantastic. People need housing. So with the tight supply, the demand being high, the fact that we were evolving further and further through the COVID, and getting better and better and healthier, all these things kind of reached a boiling point, you could call it.
I really wonder if because I know last active listings were starting to go down, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I really wonder if inventory levels will go down enough where even the rise in interest rates don't create the effect, because inventory will be tightened and you may still have some demand that will keep prices flat. Prices were flat kind of January, August, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
July and August.
Here's another perspective. We know the old saying that we don't buy houses, we don't buy homes, we buy payments, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the peak, having an $800,000 mortgage at the peak, 20% down, it would be, I think the payment was $3,500 and change. If you look at the rates today, that payment is not much different, because although the rates have gone up, or fixed rates in this case, and variable, but fixed rates, the house prices have gone down.
Yeah.
So with that factored in, the payments are very similar.
Exactly. And so once that's deciphering the information, right? Is trying to figure out, help people understand that, if the prices have come down and payments have gone up, or the cost of borrowing has gone up, there is a point at which the payment actually effectively stays the same. So if you've got a monthly budget of X and you're saying, well, what can I afford? Well, now that the values of the house have come down, as long as your budget really hasn't changed, right? But the amount of mortgages obviously changed, but that differentiator.
And this is something we're continually monitoring. I mean, as of now, if you look at February and you look at today, virtually the payments are unchanged.
But to your point, if you don't have someone telling you this and deciphering that for you, if you're on the outside or you listen to the headlines and you're seeing rates are high, I had someone message me yesterday on social, like, oh, I'm not gonna buy now because with the rates the way they are. I'm like, well, hang on, there actually might be a very good opportunity to buy. If you don't know, if you're not deciphering through those headlines, you're not going to know where the opportunities are.
You're not.
Right?
No,
so to that point, so right now, if you're an investor, where do investors win? What's the best area to invest or product type to invest in, would you say? Right?
I really like condos right now, because the condo market didn't move as dramatically as the detached and semi-detached market. So I really like condos in the center core of the city, and I think that we are seeing an opportunity here for investors. Now, just my caveat to everybody is I'm a long-term investor. I'm not a flipper.
As you should be,
kind of
really,
guy.
real
So-
estate.
So I'm always, I have to always say that. Like,
Even
I'm
when
always
someone
thinking
says to us,
long-term.
we want to buy
right?
pre-con, we want to sign it. Like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Or
Yeah.
sign, or
Like-
can you buy me a house to flip in a year?
Yeah.
We don't like to get involved in those things, because
It's tough. Look, and
You can try
and you
and-
can get very good at it,
Yeah.
and you can take an older property and renovate it and resell it, and if the market timing works for you, it can work. But what I love and we've always done is the buy and hold strategy. So I think there's great buy and hold opportunities right now. Rental rates are rising.
that's another thing we want to talk
Which
about.
is-
That's awesome. So the payments are relatively the same from the peak.
Yep.
And yet we have rentals. Am I right that it's increased significantly? I mean,
Right, yeah.
on 6 of our clients who had previously bought pre-construction, their rental rates went from $1,900 to $2,400. Okay,
Yep.
and we had to change them all, give them their 90-day notice, and
Yep.
we changed them all. and I think it's still climbing. I mean, there's a lot of
there's still
There's
competition.
a lot
out
of
there.
pressure.
There's
There's
a
a
lot of
lot
pressure
of pressure on rents right now, which is a bit of a problem in its own right. You know,
for people looking for housing, right? Like,
you know, when rental rates are up 19% year over year, it's a big move. For investors, there's, you know, an opportunity there, and you know, it's just the reality of our marketplace, and so I think there's a good opportunity there for sure. Yeah, that's great,
Chris,
guys.
thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah,
I was
for
going to say
having
something
me.
that was
No, happy
yeah.
to be here, guys.
Thanks, guys. No, thank you,
Congratulations. I think you're doing great work. So anything I can do, let me know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.